We will soon know in the next 2 or 3 days the fate of Brahmastra and whether the boycott calls of the film have found any traction amongst the viewers. Honestly, that is a secondary point. What is of more importance is the fact that Bollywood is split down the middle on religious lines, and the ugliness of the situation is for all to see. If you believe the so called secular liberal lobby in the country, the careful vetting of films for any material detrimental to the feelings of the majority community began with the rise of the BJP in electoral politics in the country. Some part of this hypothesis is not off the mark. There has been greater anger and sensitivity in the last few years at the irresponsible and wanton depiction of Hindu gods and goddesses on the silver screen. The question to be asked, therefore, is twofold. Is the cinematic depiction and treatment of religious matters of the majority community in Bollywood kosher, a kind of innocent, gentle poking of fun at religious practices, or even a necessary cinematic license that is the natural right of a creative filmmaker? And the second part of the question is whether all the scanning of content in Bollywood films for religious hurt began post 2014 when the BJP came into power. I will answer both parts of the question in a minute, but first, a warm welcome to all viewers of the CAA show, in which CAA is conversations and analysis. And my name is Juggi Bhasin. To watch our show, press the big red subscriber button on your screen, and subscription is, of course, completely free. The first part of the question is easily answerable. No, the religious profiling and distortion of Bollywood content did not begin post 2014. It has been going on since films have been made in India. In film after film, the Pandit or the Brahmin has been shown as a person of evil intent who leads a double life, indulges in corruption, leads a wanton life in his private space, and is always looking to create trouble for the innocent lower classes. Much of this distorted depiction can be traced back to the rise of leftist sentiments and socialistic policies under Nehru. In tune with the framework of Communist International of that era, the hero in Indian films was always the long suffering peasant, and the villain was the higher class and higher caste Pandit or a Thakur. The pinpricks were there even in that era, though a large scale criticism of Hindu practices and deities was avoided. In contrast, the Muslim minority was given its space by the rise of the Muslim social films like Chaudhry Ka Chand, which depicted a Muslim social scene of La La Land, completely unreal but charming nonetheless, of snowy Urdu dialogue, Nawabs, unfulfilled romances, and bygone eras. The Hindus, under the leadership of the working class hero or the outright romantic waster of the Shami Kapoor variety, had their space, while the Muslims in the form of Muslim socials had their space. All that changed in the 70s, especially with the coming of age of a film like Diwar, which in a very subtle way opened the religious divide that had somehow been papered before. In the film, the hero is always lucky and protected when he wears badge number 786, which is the numerical translation for Bismillah al-Rahman al-Rahim. And whenever the hero goes to the steps of the temple, he is due for a disappointment or a tragedy. No surprise also that the story and screenplay was a creation of Salim Javed, especially Javed, who over the years has emerged as the chief architect of BJP bashing for his Hindutva orientation. And Diwar opened the floodgates for more Hindu bashing in films. The era of the underworld and the flooding of underworld money in Bollywood and the rise of Dawood and the spread of terrorism and extremism in the country coincided strangely with the rise of controversial and inflammatory directors like Mahesh Bhatt, who became known for their Hindu bashing pronouncements rather than films of note. question to be asked is, was the rise of people like Mahesh Bhatt in that era a mere coincidence? In film after film continuing with the Diwar tradition, Hindu practices and gods and goddesses were trashed, made fun of, or even reviled, and the Muslims are always the good guys, the underdogs, their religious beliefs to be emulated. In a sense, the 80s and 90s era Bollywood directors and actors like Amir Khan, by their simplistic, silly, and even incendiary pronouncements and depiction of religious beliefs in films like PK, sharpened the religious divide in Bollywood. It was a far cry from the era of gentlemen Muslim actors like Yusuf Sahab, who changed his screen name to Dilip Kumar to assimilate better with Hindu audiences. And so, to answer the second part of our earlier question, the depiction of Hindu gods and goddesses, ritualism, and beliefs in Bollywood is not innocent. It is meant to offend and sharpen the religious divide. And certain directors and actors excel in perpetuating this offense. The present protest and a rising of sorts against this trend of demeaning Hinduism was a long time in the coming. But now it is at the doorstep and there is no escaping it. The people are using their boycott Bollywood movies as a weapon to correct historic wrongs. The religious weaponization of Bollywood is here to stay. But then, who started the fire? Let's be clear about it. And so, on this note, I come to the end of this episode of the CAA show, and I hope you really enjoyed this particular episode. If you like our show, do subscribe to us. And on this note, it's goodbye and cheers from my end.